Hello and welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me today. My name is Philip Ramos here with another episode in the Strength Studio. We're going to do in our Spotlight series. We're going to take some time to interview Kateri Reyes. She's an integrative health practitioner, gold rank in doTERRA. Super excited. She had an opportunity to share her story with me. I was blown away. Like, oh my gosh, I can't wait for people to hear. I can't wait for people to just connect. Kateri, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
Course. I'm so excited to be here.
Good. I love it. I love it. I love it. So throughout these interviews, our goal is to highlight, and identify and relate, right? Provide hope for different people. And I know that we're always as we showcase or as we identify different things in more ways than one. I think sometimes we're different, but in a lot of ways we're very we're the same, right? We do the same things. We're parents, spouses, right? Entrepreneurs, all coaches, all kinds of different stuff. So tell us a little bit about I'm sure you play multiple roles, multiple things. You got all kinds of different things you're balancing. Introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself so we can get to know you.
Okay, awesome. Well, as I said, I'm Kateri. I'm a mother of six. I'm an integrative health practitioner. That's something that is newer on my plate. It's something that's developed from my doTERRA career and just inspired me to embrace holistic health and helping people restore their bodies. That's what I'm so passionate about. I was in a former life a photographer for 20 years, did weddings, portraits, and magazines. So I've lived a very colorful, expansive life. I live here in Utah. That's by choice. I got a chance to start life over, which you'll hear in my story. But doTERRA gave me the freedom to be able to decide where that was and what that looked like. And I wanted to play in the mountains as much as possible. So here I am with my six kids and we're living life.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. So introduce where you're at now, right? Kids and life and, your current focus, your career. But, let's talk about where it started
Yeah.
because I think that, sometimes when we introduce ourselves to people or people see, right? I think Instagram, social media is one of those things where always, we see something, we see someone, we hear them talk and we think, oh, this person has been this way this their entire life, right?
Oh
But what
yeah,
we
this
don't
curated
know, what do you
version.
say?
This curated version that we've created, right? That
Yes.
persona.
Exactly, exactly. What we don't know, right, is their journey. We don't know, the hoops and the different things they got to jump through. So let's talk about that because I think that where now in starting, your journey, business, jumping into business, becoming the health practitioner that you are. Let's start. Let's take a look at that. Like, tell us about your starting point. What life was like before you decide to make the decision to jump in.
Okay, well, my life is dramatically different from now to where it was when this whole journey began. And I will admit to you, this journey began at the worst time in my life. Like there was a that deep rock bottom. I think everyone has that deep rock bottom story. Mine was one that just happened in seconds.
Mhm.
And I was a young mom, had three little boys under the age of 7. I was a full-time photographer, did weddings, had a studio for babies, just living this huge life that was very chaotic and crazy at the same time. Um, and I had a really troubled marriage and a lot of struggles there. So my external life, my career was very much an outlet for me at the time. Um, However, we were at this period of finding myself and finding my career path and seeing it really take off, and that was in June 2012 when everything suddenly changed and came to a halt with the death of my son. My middle child, Avery, passed away in an accident in our home. He was only 6 years old. And as you can imagine, it rocked us to our core. I mean, it was the highest level of devastation we could ever have faced as a family. And I was also pregnant at the time. I was 6 months pregnant with my first daughter. And I was so just completely just torn apart. And how do you start to pick the pieces from that? Where do you go with that?
Right?
And I knew instantly there was this mother bear effect of I had to stay strong for my family was the first reality. My husband really crumbled and really kind of relied on drugs to keep himself going every day. My doctor, my OB, sent me literally, I kid you not, a grocery paper bag size bag had delivered to my house of antidepressants and sleeping medication. And I was already in a high risk pregnancy, and she said, "Your only job is to stay pregnant." And I was so grateful for her for rallying for me and just jumping ahead of the game and knowing that my needs were going to be high. However, I was also instantly terrified of everything in that bag. I just had lost a child. No part of me wanted to put another child at risk.
Right.
Now, that didn't change the need because 4 to 5 days into this, I'm not sleeping. I'm having tons of flashbacks. It was a very traumatic experience, and I was starting to lose my ability to cope well.
Mm.
Um, so I called actually my business partner at the time, Katie Leverins. Her husband was a doctor, and I was like, Katie, I need Dan's input on if this was you, what in this paper bag would he let you try?
Right.
Um, she surprised me with her answer. She said, actually, hold on. She's like, I've been wanting to come and help you. I didn't know what to do. She's like, I'm a terrible cook, so I'm not going to make you food. But I have something natural I want you to try. And she came over, we hugged and we cried, we talked, and she brought out these two little brown bottles of essential oils. And I will admit, I laughed her. I laughed her down the street. I was like, Katie, there is nothing that's going to come as a smell in a bottle that's going to change my life right now. Like, you see what's going on here, right? And she was like, no, listen, I haven't been experiencing these changing my family, and I know this is the perfect time to let your family experience that. So just try it. Like, you have nothing to lose. And she was right. I didn't. So the first bottle she gave me was Serenity, and Elevation. This was back when doTERRA was young and new. We were all giving the small sample bottles. Oh no, she gave me the whole thing. She gave me the whole bottles of each, which I really respect and appreciate.
Yes.
Um, Serenity really called to me. That was something she said to put on like perfume, let yourself fall asleep with it. And after having not slept for 5 nights, to just wake up restored and feeling like I had energy and peace, that was a game changer. So this anchored our family so quickly and gave me something to rely on and that was safe and effective.
Mm.
Um, so fast forward, only like we had the funeral at the beginning of July. And fast forward just 6 weeks later, I was giving birth, and literally the day I came home from the hospital, the doTERRA kit that I said, I was like, I need oils for sure. Give me everything else. My kit arrived the same day I came home from hospital. And it was just this anchoring that I knew I needed to experience. Now, the wild thing is there was such alignment happening because prior to this, that entire fall and winter beforehand, the same son who passed away had gone through a series of significant health struggles that required antibiotics after antibiotics after antibiotics, and to the point where my practitioner took me aside and he's like, listen, I could actually lose my license for this, but we're now in the position where it's gotten significantly dangerous. We can't keep giving him this level of antibiotics. And this was on a day when it took 4 different nurses and doctors to hold him down for over 5 minutes while they injected an Elmer's glue thickness of an antibiotic into his glutes. Um, I was sobbing. I felt like I was just like nothing felt in alignment. And as a mom, you'd have that gut feeling like what we're doing isn't working, and this is just making him worse. So the doctor took me aside and he said, listen, I just came back from a conference and they were talking about essential oils and oregano specifically. He said, I don't know anything about this or how to use it, but I want you to go and look for oil of oregano because I know that it's going to do what the antibiotics are doing, but in a much safer way
Sure.
and help protect his little body and his gut without wrecking it like we keep doing.
Yeah.
Respected him so much for that. I tried it, but it was so overwhelming because there's now this aisle of shelves of oil of oregano, different colors and types. And
Yes.
where do you start? How do you use this stuff?
Yeah.
No information on how. So fast forward now, we're in this position where oils have entered our life and they've entered our life with community. That was a game changer for me. Was it wasn't just here's the thing to use. It was now a whole entire network of women who are supporting each other and showing each other, coming into my home and helping me lay my babies down and teaching me how to massage the oils, where to apply, how to dilute. And I felt so grateful. That was a time I needed community more than anything. I will tell you though, um, Katie was already my business partner in photography, and I
Right.
was like, Katie, I really love what doTERRA is doing. This is the stupidest time of my life to want this as a business. Like, there's no way, no way that we're ready for this. And then I was like, but I also know that what's happening, my family, I can't be quiet about.
Mm,
And so I actually do need to take this seriously. And so I was like, teach me how to share like you did, because it's impacting us. And I can't stay quiet about it. I want people to know about this. So my start began very organically with some hesitation of like, I'm not here to take on a new career path. I'm not here to replace my income. I
sure.
had a six-figure income to replace. So that wasn't really something I thought doTERRA could do for me.
Right, right,
Um,
right.
so that was kind of that was my start. That was how we got oils into our household. I was already the entrepreneur mindset. I had only ever had a boss for 2 years of my entire adulthood. Um, I love entrepreneurial life. I love the freedom that it gives me as a mom, especially being able to. It was very important for me to not um, miss a minute of my children's lives, but I still needed to put a roof over their head. So that was definitely my entrepreneurial goals and dreams were big from the start.
That's incredible. And it's incredible that, going back to your story, that you trusted, your business partner's husband, right? Or ask her that question and for her to respond differently and say, you know what, I got something better, right?
Yeah.
Coming from, his knowledge, his industry, right? He could give you some facts, some,
Yeah.
data, some information around what you had in that bag. But instead she says, I think I got something better for you. And how encouraging that. Same thing with you, the situation with your child, and here you are trying to do this thing, but then he's like, listen, I think there might be something better. And I think that's ultimately why so many people do choose into, let's just say alternative ways of health or
Yeah.
thinking or anything for that matter, right? Is that we're, we have this thing that people are trying to push and pump on us. And, when we're open to other things, or, we have good relationships, that they could, maybe introduce something different and something new. And so that's
Yeah.
amazing that in those in your state of mind, right, must have been, going through everything you're going through with your business, of course, because you had that, plus, bearing of the child, plus you were giving birth, plus what, your husband, all these different dynamics, yet you're still, you had great people around you to, to introduce such things. I think that's, incredible, and just, I mean, I'm kind of blown away, it's just so incredible. Well, and then from there, what do you think was, you mentioned, you had this six-figure income as a business, you're already an entrepreneur, you are already all these different situations. Choosing into something new must have seemed big, right? Can be overwhelming. So what was that thing? What do you think that for you? What was that? What was that thing that you felt like, okay, I'm going to step into this, and do this thing. What was in, because you had to step into different expectations, right? Different mindsets in building and stepping into network marketing itself. What do you think was the biggest driver and motivator, behind that decision?
Well, here's the reality. I am a relationships first person. And as a photographer, I had a very up close and personal relationship with people that I was working with through all of their biggest moments in life. I mean, I was there for their weddings and all their prep for their weddings, and then the birth of their babies. I was the first person who got to know most people were pregnant because I was the safest one they could tell before they told their family. So I had this network of people that I was already very close with. And I began to notice this reality when I would have a newborn shoot in my studio. These are brand new moms who are just days into motherhood.
Uh-huh.
And I would literally sit there while I was shooting and I would be coaching them. I would literally be doing a coaching session with them on how to get through these first weeks of motherhood. And doTERRA really became a part of that. I mean, I was giving breastfeeding advice and colic advice, and now suddenly I have these solutions in my hand of
Wow.
safe ways that I can now say, hey, let's try this together. And so there was this it was almost a natural fit for me that I just love to help and nurture people. um I also have my own journey. My own journey of my life began in my childhood with autoimmune disease right out of the gate. I was the child who was on antibiotics right from 6 months onward.
Mm,
and they destroyed my body, and multiple surgeries and interventions. And by the time I was 5 years old, I gone to maybe a few days of kindergarten because I was sick the entire time. Um, then by the time I was 17, I had full-blown fibromyalgia
mm,
and was given the bio age of an 80-year-old as a measurable marker of where my genes were functioning at that level by that point. So there was this conscious change when I was a teenager to kind of fight the system. And I wasn't given hope was my struggle. I was at that point in my life given antidepressants and experimental biologics, which I'm so grateful that I said no to both of them, but
yeah.
especially the biologic because it ended up killing over 300,000 people in the next 2 years. So the fact that I had God's breath in me to say no, I
Yeah.
know this is out of alignment and I might suffer, but I'll find another way. And this was back when there was no other way. This was
Yeah.
before we had the internet or resources or anything natural was completely taboo.
Yeah.
So it took me 20 years to find my own way and to make little changes and little things that could help me over time. Um, and then doTERRA comes along. And then there's this rapid effect of things I'm doing that now I'm rapidly changing my body and rapidly making headway where I had only gotten so far in the past. And so here I have these young moms and I'm looking at them and realizing I can help them never do what I had to go through. Like
Right.
never have to have that journey with their children that I had to have on repeat with my own children. So it was just this a bigger mission that wasn't attached to a dollar sign or having to put a roof over my kids' heads. It was just like there's a mission here that's really strong. And there was also just this little part of me that my son's death was just a complete accident. And there's a human part of us that you want to attach some kind of a reason or a sentiment to such a deep time in your life, a loss of that magnitude, you want to find something good in it.
Yes.
Um, and there was nothing at the time, but what I began to realize was his legacy, was this gift I could give to other families to take the stress that we carry and the fear that we carry so much of medical intervention that we bring our kids in the ER as moms is not because our kids are in danger, but just because we're afraid and we don't know how to make them comfortable. That's really one of the biggest reasons. And so it was like, no, this is such an alignment that I can help people just learn this simple way. And, it's funny because we say the alternative way. This is actually the OG,
Right.
natural health is the original.
Right.
There's nothing alternative. In fact, modern medicine is the alternative, which
Right.
I try to reverse that now. Like
Yeah.
you now have this in your home. And that was really, Laura Jacobs was a big mentor for me and her mission for her team as she was building it. And she came on and taught all these workshops for us that as she taught, and I'm input focused.
Hmm.
So that's my number two strength. And the way that she just poured into us, and I came away with a different level of knowing my body than I'd ever had before. And everything just made sense that had gone wrong up until this point. And I was just like, this is what people need. They need the power to know themselves and to know their body, not fear it, not be a victim of it.
Hmm.
So for me, there was just this massive drive on a mission. And her, like Laura's original goal was to put a healer in every home.
Yes.
She had a goal of 1 million homes. And I was like, I want to be a part of that. And if I can add 10,000 homes to that, absolutely bring it on. So there was just such a soul alignment with all of this. The business was actually, I used to joke, like I did the business terribly in the beginning. I was a hippie slinging over my oils over my shoulders, just like you need oils and you need oils.
It's changed the world, right?
Like we'll figure the business out. I really did that. Like I figured the business out in hindsight. I could have done some things differently had I had strategy,
Yes. Yeah, yeah,
out of
yeah.
the gate. But the mission was what locked me in for sure.
That's incredible. Gosh, I love it. Such an incredible story. And again, incredible drive to choose into and do, interviewing and meeting with so many different people, you find that there are different things and that drives them,
Yeah.
and make those choices. But it's fun to listen to, different stories and because I think that so many people can relate to whether if it's, looking for, going to the doctor and not feeling like that was the right thing, or feeling like, their spouse in trouble, their family struggling, and we need this, the stress. And so these are the kind of things that can help, families,
Yeah.
and what we can do. And sometimes, obviously we want to always know the business we're getting into. And I think that's one thing about expectations that we got to be clear on. But sometimes we're just so driven and motivated. We're like, we'll figure it out, right? And I think that's a wonderful, obviously you've found yourself throughout that journey. So one of the things that, and you mentioned your strengths as a strengths coach myself, you know that everybody has unique strengths, unique talents. They're just unique in themselves. So how do you think your strengths specifically have shaped your journey and have also shaped your success that you've been able to build so far?
I think that they have been my journey, and it's been a beautiful thing. I didn't even know about strengths themselves until I think it was about 2014, so a couple of years into my journey.
Mm-hmm.
And it was funny because it was a love-hate when I first met my strengths. I think that's really common because
Yes.
it's like you attach the bad, the negative to your strength. So my number one strength is strategic. And at first I was like, well, of course, because
Right.
I
Right.
have to command this ship and put a roof over our heads and be, I wasn't a single mom at the time, but I was living like a single mom.
Sure.
And I was the sole provider for our entire household, and it was just like everything's on me. So of course I'm strategic. And I was like, I want to retest this later on, see if I really am. Um, and I was kind of negative about it. But I actually, once I learned it though, I began to just see myself at a higher level and start to realize, well, yeah, this is my brain working in its best self.
Yeah.
But it's partnered with relationship, because input is number two for me. So
Okay.
I love to gather information. My team knows that I am the go-to for like I will read medical journals at night for fun. This is like I stack up loads of data and I try to make it
Bring it on.
simple.
Bring it on.
Yeah. So I'm like, give me the science. I'm the person that is like there at the crack of dawn, early events to learn from the medical panels and stuff. Like, I want all the juicy details. And then I want to make it actionable and real for people around me so I can break it down, because not everyone can comprehend that. But there's so much goodness to know about our bodies. And so I'm so excited about that and driven by that. So it's kind of like I have this strategy mindset, help people find protocols that work for them and move them to higher ground with their health. I want to gather the data, and then I have all these relationship of arranger and connectedness and includer behind that really help with the networking part of this and building a team and people being partnered together who can influence each other in the right ways, and kind of connecting those bigger dots to make it real. Because this is not just to me a product-based company. That is only one of the good things that you get when it
Right.
comes to being a wellness
Right.
advocate. You have this community behind you
Yes.
and resources that propel you. Because like if this is on just our shelves, we would probably have them dusted on the back of our closet, just collecting dust,
100%.
rather than being an open part of our lives and spread throughout everywhere in our lives where we can use them. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think strengths really, they developed me, and then that was kind of like a place to build from that point. And now I could see my team members, and I could kind of really got really good, probably just like you, at gassing people's strengths. You can, the more you know them, you're like, I bet I know what I'm working with here.
Yes. Yes.
It changed my relationships forever. Learning how to see people in their strengths, and actually, as I've grown in this, it's made my life so much easier, having relationships and having partners, having best friends and coworkers, because I can always know that rather than be offended by their method, I'm like, no, they're just living in their absolute best self right now, and let me get out of the way and, find ways to meet them there that I can make functional and make, a partnership. So I think strengths are a huge asset, and knowing ourselves, that was a big thing for me. And I will say this was a pivotal thing for me. I mentioned at the beginning of this, I had a really hard marriage. And by hard, I mean significant physical and mental emotional abuse for 15 years. It was an ongoing struggle. Um, I will say the voice of doTERRA in my head, pouring in so consistently at all of our leadership retreats and my team, my community, and the amount of personal development they put in front of us, I began more and more to realize I can't escape the truth of my own worth and value. And it filled me up in such a way that I got really strong, strong enough to finally do the right thing and free my children and myself from that environment. And at that point, we also had the financial freedom to do that and to be free. And so I retired my photography business, and literally by the grace of God, it is at a very critical time. My husband at the time had turned to street drugs and alcohol. And so it became a very scary scenario in our lifestyle of me trying to keep everyone together and facing this serious danger that we were in so consistently.
Yeah.
Um, and I had this community rallied behind me that just helped reinforce everything that they knew I was made for
Mm.
and just push me forward without looking back. And I'll always be grateful. I don't know if I really could have done it. Like I see God's hand in all of this and how the position I was in and the leadership I was pushed to actually awakened strength in me I didn't know that I had and gave me so much of a resource to be able to draw from as I had to make these big transitions.
That's powerful. At the beginning, you talked about how, sometimes when our strengths come to light, right, whether it's our Gallup strengths or even other things, we can often dismiss them, right? We don't celebrate them. We devalue them and how they play a part in our life, or, we see them and we start to, define what that is. For example, strategic, and we don't connect the dots as to how these things have got us through some of the biggest moments in our life and struggles in our life. And when we start to connect that dot, we don't just see the value in ourselves and what we've accomplished, and obviously what you've accomplished, but you start to see that in other people. And I think that's one of the greatest things that we, as whether entrepreneurs, network marketers, strengths, no matter what, the more we find, the more we connect the dots in ourselves and how we brought the best version of ourselves to these things, the more we can help other people see that, and then I help other people identify that, because
Yeah.
that's powerful. When you can take someone's story, although as difficult it is, or even their current situation, and you can help them see that they have it within them, to be the
Yeah.
solution to that problem, and they have it within them to create what they want to create. That's powerful. There's no better thing that we can do for, I believe, me personally, right, the human race, than to pump themselves up, an individual up, to believe that they have it within them to be the solution to their problem. And that's
Yeah.
one thing I absolutely love about strengths, as we connect these dots and connect these things. And I think you're a beautiful and wonderful example of that, with all that you've gone through,
Thank you.
and how you've been able to do that. So, with everything you shared, and you're identifying specifically your strategic or other things, what would you consider? You also mentioned your input, and your brain and pulling, but what would you consider your superpower is in life and business, and what sets you apart? Like, if you can identify, everything that you've gone through, where you're at, what you do, you've talked about connecting with relationships, what would you, if there's something you could identify, what would be that superpower you feel like you just, you're good with it, it brings the best version out of you.
I would say honestly, it's probably my strength of connectedness,
Mm.
which might be a surprising one, but it's the one that kind of is the under current and the thread that brings it all together because we don't always have control over what happens to us in life. And there is that gift of being able to look for the bigger picture and being patient with the seasons that you're in. I know if I had been really strong achiever, I would have been very frustrated with my life for a long time because I have friends that are achievers. I just feel bad for them because they're always trying to push so hard all the time. And if they don't get it, they really get sad. But the connectedness helped me find the beauty in each season. And even when I wasn't killing it on paper, right? Like even when the rank isn't coming through and the big celebrations that maybe on the corporate side are recognized are coming through, I tell people like the first rank that I hit was life changing, was like my presidential diamond was becoming a single mom and doing so safely and being able to choose our life and be
Your
free to,
version of success, right?
yeah, that was the most exponentially powerful gift I could have ever given myself, was that level of freedom to just rebuild our lives and do that. And to see God's hand in all of that and see the plan, like the master plan the entire time, and learn to take that connectedness and find the people that I need in each season to anchor to and to partner with. So I think that's kind of that's the biggest thing for me because I can see in, ahead. And of course, we've all been through COVID together, so we know that like there's so much outside of our control. And yet, if we keep that perspective and stay curious about what we're supposed to learn in that season, what we're supposed to grow, and how we're supposed to, develop towards the next one, I think that gives me the power to be more resilient. And I think that's for sure the winning the winning strategy to getting through all these hardships over time.
Wow, that's incredible. That's incredible that you, again, you can, after all of that, right, sit back and identify, right? It isn't the rank, it isn't the thing, it isn't the stage, it isn't, but identify what does really drive me, what does really motivate me? What am I out there shooting for? Knowing that for myself has, really helped me fine tune the effort I want to put in the direction I want to put it. And when we don't know those things, we're being driven maybe by outside influences, whether if it's by relationships that we have or what other people deem as successful or priorities, right?
Yeah.
When we know that within ourselves, when we're internally connected with what that looks like, that's incredibly empowering,
You
incredibly.
know, it's funny because very early, like in my first year and a half of doTERRA, I was at a leadership retreat, and we were being prompted to journal out and share our goals and like plan ahead the strategy for ourselves and add like dreams and a vision board. And I had to come to the realization in that moment, very humbly, I didn't have it in me at
Mm-hmm,
that time
mm-hmm,
I didn't have it in me to dream.
mm-hmm,
I couldn't think of a thing to achieve. I mean, it was just such a having been in survival for so many years of my life and just trying to get through each day. Um, didn't give me the freedom to think bigger and to look outside myself.
mm-hmm.
And it was a beautiful conversation I got to have because of that. Like that awareness hit me. And my mentor, took me aside, we talked through it. And because she had never encountered that, she's like, I never had anybody who couldn't put a dream together. I was like, but
Yeah,
this is real for me.
yeah,
And actually it was a growth moment for her too, to realize, wow, if people are in survival, they're just on needs, meeting their needs is their
sure,
only goal.
yeah.
Um, and so, but that was a bridge that I crossed from that point on because after that, I began to start thinking in those terms, like, okay, well, what if I could dream? What if I could think bigger? And what if I could look out 5 years from now and have some input on what my life looked like, rather than just be along for the ride in so many different parts of my livelihood at that point. So I think that's a thing to recognize is that not everyone's capable of that dream or that strategy out of the gate. And I call that forth because I know a lot of the people that want this in some form, they limit themselves because they're like, well, it's not meant for me yet because I don't have what it takes. Life's not in the right place. Da, da, da. I'm like, let me tell you about life not being the right place.
Right.
Um, it's always going to be possible if you just do the baby steps and if you anchor to the things that are more passionate for you and that are more mission focused for you. Find your mission. Sometimes that's a better way to align them rather than just be, goal focused when it comes to success.
100%. One of the things, so in doing, as a Gallup coach and I'm a corporate trainer, one of the things that we identify is what is the impacts, retention, and engagement in any organization, any community, entrepreneurs. And one of the biggest things that people overlook that actually impacts engagement is capacity. And when I say capacity, I mean like well-being, right? When people
Yeah.
can't think straight, the thought of them being more engaged in anything. It could be like even cleaning the house, right? It could be
Yeah.
going to work that day. The thought of them doing that is so overwhelming that they can't fathom it, right? People that, when you identify capacity also is emotional capacity, meaning they don't have the emotional, tank to be able to face the day or to handle
Yeah.
this situation or this relationship. Capacity when it comes time to physical capacity, energy. I mean, how often do we hear this? I don't have the energy, right, to even get out of bed, or the energy to do these things, or the energy to play with my kids. So these are all examples of one of the biggest things that hinders what we call engagement. As you do any type of research in any community, any organization, it is a real thing. And so
Yeah.
when we're sitting there, hey, what's your goal? What do you want to do? What do you want to accomplish? Right? And we're, when we're over, we're expecting this massive thing and this motivating thing. And people are like, listen, I'm struggling getting out of bed right now. or I'm struggling, going to work, because I don't want to be there, or I'm struggling with everything that's going on emotionally and I can't cope. And I think that as we identify, where people are at, we can, and also identify their well-being, right, their capacity for more, we can really improve engagement in the very thing that they value. So with that being said, engagement is a top priority in anything, especially as an entrepreneur. You're a
Yeah.
mom, right? You're a mom. You have a schedule. You have probably kids' games, right? You have events. You have class plays you got to go to. You have all these different things on top of, sounds like not even while you were married, you were also playing, as a single mom. So with engagement always being a top priority, how do you stay engaged, right? How do you stay engaged, and what are some of the things that you encourage others to do to stay engaged?
I think one of my biggest things is, and this might be part of it's me feeding my strengths, honestly. Because I'm input high, I have to receive input. Like that is something that you will, if you're in my car, we'll listen to a podcast together, which my kids go to high school every day. They're like, okay, what are we hearing today?
What are we listening to today, Mom? Yeah.
Yes. I notice each time that I'm low in my business, I feel like I'm really running ragged. It's because I haven't poured into myself enough.
Ooh,
And I haven't given myself the freedom to let me receive because there's a ton of giving we do in this business. We pour into people
sure.
and we step into their story. Like sometimes when they're in a crisis, even similar to mine, we are ditching oils late at night and coming into people's hospital rooms and just, being there, people in crisis or in a
Yeah.
struggle. And then all the education and the team building comes with everything. And there's just that level of what do I need to kind of recharge me? The other thing is pausing. Actually, I have a friend just recently, she taught me, she's like, I have been doing a 3-minute pause every hour. And it's game changer for my business because, I mean, literally, we sat together, we laid on the floor. We were working on a presentation together, and we're like, 3-minute pause. We laid on the floor, did a 3-minute guided meditation. But it was so good because in our day, we get so caught up in all the stuff. Like we're looking at our calendar, I'm looking at my watch. I got an hour to make the next presentation happen and get my calendar booked out with clients and send emails and all this follow up. And then my head's just in this overwhelming place. And
Yeah.
creativity never flows when you are in the overwhelm.
Mm-mm.
Um, I loved learning from Hal Elrod, talking about how like no business has ever had like their breakthroughs at the office. Like creative genius doesn't happen there.
Yeah.
And so giving yourself time to detach and let your mind wander enough or be free enough or have things coming into you to kind of stimulate your creative thinking. And like I said too, I get out in the mountains. I do things that are not business oriented, and it actually makes me a stronger entrepreneur.
Yeah.
The truth is when the business is you, which that's who we are. Like as entrepreneurs, it doesn't really matter what product we're behind. The business is always you.
Mhm.
You can't clock out of you. So you have to be able to manually find ways to clock out and turn off enough to where that energy and creative flow turns back on. And
Mm.
I can always catch myself in a season where I'm just doing too much and I have too much on my plate. I've gotten like stronger as a professional to program for rest and recharging and doing the things that fuel me.
Mm. Gosh, that's so important. It's so important for us to identify those things, to integrate those things, right? To know our needs and know that they need to be met. Because again, when we identify what we need and our needs, we can encourage others to do that, right? Take that time, identify that, connect with that, and pour into that. I love how you said that. Your input, you got to pour into yourself. I think that's a great way of putting it. Now, you've illustrated some, incredible your journey and what you've gone through, how your strengths played a part into that. And one thing that we know, about our strengths is it's not all smooth sailing. We have struggles, and although they're incredibly impactful in the way we do things, we can often overdo them, right, or underdo them. And I've shared examples of my positivity or my communication, that sort of thing. But what would you think is an example of how have your strengths, obviously they've done huge things for you in all you've done, but what do you think, how they hindered you? How have they, hindered maybe some of your journey and your process?
For sure. Several ways. I think there's some really obvious ones for me. When, just as the funniest example, I had to train myself to stop doing this. When someone would reach out to me and ask, like, "Hey, I'm listening to you. I now say I need oils in my life. Here's the issue I want to solve for. What would you suggest?" And they pour out their heart in that, like, here's my struggle, and that kind of creates a vulnerability of their struggle. My strategic and input lead the way, and they don't stop for a second and like, hey, I'm so sorry you're struggling. They don't care about that. They're just going to give you the answer and it's going to be a small encyclopedia, right? So like I've had to learn to stop and create some empathy and connection so that I don't railroad somebody with tons of data that because their input's at 34, they don't have it. And so I don't want to overwhelm anybody, right? So I think that for sure has been something that I has hindered me in the past, and I've caught it and been able to realize, okay, I still have to actually battle it consciously. I just did a text message yesterday. That same thing. I read it and I was like, oh, there's not a drop of I'm so sorry you're going through this in there. Let me go back and add that at the top. Um, so that I think is a really important one. And the same thing with how I teach and connect to my team, because I'm always going to come from this higher level of background and data.
Yes.
Um, and because I've been so hungry to learn, I pour out, but sometimes I pour out too much. And it's not everyone has the level of a container to absorb all of it.
This guy right
And then
here, I don't.
but then it just makes you shut down, right? Like you have too much information, you can't make a decision. And so I had to really train myself. And honestly, one of the things I've done, and this is why I love network marketing, I can lock arms with people with strengths that are better than me. So I have some friends of mine that are my business partners. They're way better at that stuff
Mm,
than I am. And
yeah.
so I'll leverage some of their strengths and learn from their strengths and see how they live their strengths out. I'm like, that was such a good way to say that. And you only said it in under a minute, you know? So, I'm trying to still always learn and adapt. But yeah, I can see that my strategy, it's a bit of a bull in a china shop sometimes and
Yeah.
takes over.
But I think it's important that we know who we are, and it's also important we know who we aren't, right?
Yeah.
I'm not I am definitely not that input guy. I'm not that learner guy. I'm not that intellectual guy. But what drives me is knowing how to move people, right? And move people to that next step. And I love that. And so I learn how to move people to that next step. I'm not in it for the sake of learning. So the more we know about ourselves, the more adjustments we can make and really get good at our own processes. And it sounds like you really have. So as an entrepreneur on your journey, all these great moments, all the different things. So in looking back, with someone that's, if just, with all the things that you've done, what do you think the single biggest and most valuable lesson, impactful lesson that you've learned along the way that you could share with someone? What is the single biggest thing that you think that you take away, if you will?
That's such a big question to ask. Honestly, I think the biggest thing, because it's been a theme in my life for so long now, is the word curious. Like getting curious has been a driving factor because we so easily get shut down when we run into roadblocks, when we find things that aren't working. And it's so easy to just throw in the towel at that point and say, okay, this isn't for me. I can't do this. But instead, getting curious and taking a step back and looking at it from different angles. And maybe I can't do it the way that I want to do it right now, but is there a different version of myself that can show up here? Is there something that I can learn from this? This was a failure, fall on my face failure, but what can I take away from that I have to repeat in the future? And that takes some of we have so much self-judgment we're so quick to run with,
Yeah.
and it can be so self-limiting. So I've freed myself from that. And trust me, self-judgment, I mean, having been in an abusive marriage for 15 years and put my kids through all that and I have friends that have asked me these shocking questions of like, why did you allow that for so long? And it's kind of a gut punch, right? But there's this level of I could fall into that trap of self-judgment, or I could just find curiosity in it and partner that with gratitude. I think that's
Mhm.
the other thing is just learning to embrace gratitude and find, like I said before, those little things that you can celebrate. Even on the hardest days, there are little things that you can count as a win. And I mean, for some people, it really is that let's just get out of bed today. And I've had those days. And it may have taken an oil bottle to get me out of bed on certain days, just to stand up and put some oils on and be able to stand, and realize my only one job today is put a load of laundry in, and that's all I can accomplish. Um, and living full out, even when you have to live small, I think that's another reality. It's like sometimes we get so big, we get so focused on our goals, and if we're not meeting them, like is it really failure?
Mhm.
Or maybe this is what I'm supposed to be living in authentically right now is just this reality. So I think that that's helped me to not stop myself and shut down because there's been 1,001 closed doors in my face over this past, 14 years now I've been doing this. And I've just learned to stay the course. And as I've done it, I've become more and more myself and more who I'm made to be because I've been able to focus on that rather than being so hard on myself.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Oh my gosh, I love that. It's part of so these videos that I do, introducing strengths and that sort of thing. It's one of my taglines is, get curious, know yourself first, deepen your understanding of others, and connect even better. And I
I
think
love that.
that's one of the things that I found so much value from strengths is that when we do get curious, if we're going to be honest with ourselves and get curious about ourselves, we got to get curious about others as well, right? And it
Yeah,
allows it forces us. I tell people all this time, the greatest gift that ever came from me becoming a strengths coach is it forced me to ask better questions, because the truth of it is I don't know what really drives you. I don't know what really motivates you. Yes, I can look statistically across the board what drives human beings, but you who are unique and the things you've gone through in life and the things that you're facing and what you actually want, I got to ask better questions if I really want to know the answer. And
for
so I
sure.
love that. Get curious. I think it's such a wonderful, uh, just a just a wonderful tip. I mean, I think everybody should, and I love that. So in wrapping this up here, coming to a close, for someone that's again facing maybe not even obviously you faced some pretty tough stuff, and there are people that face those things, and some even more, right, or some even less. But I think whatever we are facing, it does hold us back from choosing into anything that we want to do. So just standing there, from the experience you've had, those types of people that are contemplating jumping into entrepreneurship, people that are contemplating jumping into, network marketing as a business model to change their life, to, come home, let go of one figure, in order
Yeah.
to, or one business in order to dive into another, to have the freedom that you have. What would be the advice that you would give them today? Like if you were talking to them today, what would be that advice for them to jump in and begin to succeed in an industry or in a profession that can provide them what they want?
Well, I do always give the advice of pace yourself.
Mm,
It's so easy to go all in, and when you just fully dive, and I get that excitement because I've had it multiple times in my life where I'm just like, I know this is the thing, and I just want to do it. And then there's this reality of, okay, but what's reasonable and rational? And so I kind of say it's just like when you're swinging from a vine, you don't let go until the next vine is solidly in your hand, right? And so
yes.
be willing.
Yeah.
Like I had to work multiple jobs for a while and be okay with that and create some bandwidth for that. So I think it's just a reasonable reality of um, give yourself the gift of taking time to make those swings and to build it up to the point where, but there's a level of commitment. There's this higher drive in me on this side to be able to reach really hard because I want to let go of the vine on this side. And for me, like photography was amazing as a career as a young mom until it began to interfere with the fact that I was booked out a year of my son's soccer tournament, right?
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
became interrupting things. So I had this new motivation of time being the highest value. And that was the driving factor. And I think it's a big factor for entrepreneurs or people who are dabbling and wanting to move to that direction. I think that there's the saying, there's the new rich. The new rich is those who have time freedom, who can
Yes.
hop in their car, on a Thursday and do a 4-day weekend, at the outdoor getaway of their choice. And
Exactly.
the joke, the van down right by the river was the original, it really was the original like doTERRA hook of
Yeah.
struggling and making it. And now like the van down by the river is when you've made it, that's what you do with your life as you
Yeah,
go to
exactly.
down
That's
by
where you
the
spend your
river.
free time.
Yeah. So there's just but there's a thing, it's like pace yourself and reward yourself. I think setting accomplishable goals, achievable goals is the first step because it's so easy to look and be like, network marketing has all these ranks and achievements that are so lofty and hard to get. And I'm like, no, focus on what is small and attainable so that you don't burn out and don't find failure, but do each thing as a success step on
Yes,
that journey.
yes.
And it changes it for you. It makes it attainable. It's climbing a ladder rather than trying to jump off of a cliff. And so, very different experience if we do it right.
No, I love it. Absolutely love it. So true, right? If we want to stay engaged, we got to know the expectations. We got to know what we're choosing into
Yeah.
before we let go of one vine. What's the other vine actually look like we're grabbing on? What color is it?
Mhm.
How long is it,
Yeah.
right? Is it thicker than this vine? There's
Mhm.
lots of details that sometimes when we let go, we're not 100% sure what we're actually grabbing onto. So knowing the
Yeah.
expectations of network marketing or being an entrepreneur for that matter, scheduling time, all these different things so we know what we're actually getting into
Yeah.
is incredibly valuable. Okay. Well, thank you again so much, Kateri. Anything that you want to leave as we're signing off? Any last thoughts? Any last message you'd like to leave?
I love these conversations that you're holding, and like you said, it is stories that bring us to life and that lead us forward and connect us to each other. So that is, I think, the hallmark of entrepreneurship is living not just authentically in our own story, but getting curious about the stories around us and leading and building based on story, because that is something that it tugs at the heartstrings more than any other product ever can. And so moving into entrepreneurship and network marketing, live in your story and learn to ask the question, just like you said, ask the questions that help draw other people's stories out of them, so that they can find the motivation to step into what you're offering. So
100%. Because that is the reason why they're doing it, right? It's not why am I doing it. It's not why you're doing it. Why are they doing it?
yeah.
What drives them, right? Maybe they want a different color van down by the river, right? I don't know.
Exactly.
I'm sitting here wanting a blue one. They want this clear crystal white one. I got to care about that, right?
Yes.
So thank you again, Kateri. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for joining me today. Thank you for all those that are watching these interviews. I hope you enjoyed them. Again, our intention is to really identify what is it, what are people's stories? What are they going through? What are the hardships they had to go through? What are the ways, what are some of the things they're doing to stay engaged, finding success? How are they leading others? What are some of those dynamics that can be created? The more and more we identify these things, we provide hope, right? We're all looking for whatever our version of freedom is, right? Whether if it's time freedom, financial freedom, be able to get on your car freedom, on a Thursday, go take a 4-day weekend. And so I absolutely love that. So thank you again, Terry, for joining me. Thank you again for all those that are watching. Please continue to join us. Please continue to watch, subscribe to our channel, come back to the Strengths channel here. And we're always here to support you, to help you move forward. Thank you again. Have a wonderful day and we'll see you later. Bye-bye.